All right. Teflon Don on trial.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
President Donald J. Trump or former president, depending on if you want to call him Mr. Trump.
President Trump, Mr. Trump.
Yeah. And he's being accused of 34 counts of filing a false business record. And he's being prosecuted for that right now.
So this is one of 4 major criminal prosecutions happening against President Trump. This one's in New York. They call it the hush money case. Most people just refer to it as the hush money case.
Yeah.
We got to break it down and make it clear for people. I think you're going to be integral to that. Help us understand it, because I mean, I've definitely done a little bit of research. It's a little bit confusing what the different causes of action are, how they relate, how you have this kind of intent, but then you got to bootstrap it to this intent to do this other thing. And let's break it down for people. But in essence, this all relates back to something that happened in 2006, right? Something happened in 2006. What was it?
Sweet love.
Okay.
Sweet love between Donald J. Trump and Stephanie Daniels, who's known as Stormy Daniels. She's a adult film actress, a sex worker, or what is commonly known as a porn star. And he had an outing with her where he basically allegedly had sex with her. And then from there, the allegations are that he tried to hush her up and paid her $130,000 to make sure. And here's where the trial is at. Did he pay her to make sure that the family doesn't find out, Trump doesn't get embarrassed, or was it for the public that the public doesn't find out? If he pays Stormy Daniels so the family doesn't find out, that's not a crime. That's not a crime at all. He's just, because the same thing happened to...
That's just bad behavior.
Same thing happened to John Edwards, and he was found not guilty.
remember.
Senator John Edwards. So
Yeah.
he was accused of the same thing, and he paid somebody to basically, because of the embarrassment of his family.
Yeah.
So the question is, did President Donald J. Trump, did he pay the $130,000 thinking that it was a quote-unquote legal expense, or was he paying somebody to influence the United States election?
$130,000 for sweet, sweet love, as you call it.
Right.
The love was oh so sweet, I'm sure, but the aftermath was sour.
Yes.
Very sour. And we're in it now as citizens.
We're in the midst of it.
Awaiting the election coming up.
Yep.
I'm so happy I could say the word election in this video because it's demonetized anyway right off the jump. So like election.
Fantastic. President Trump. We could say anything we want to now.
People should know we've really run up against the limits of YouTube censorship. I kind of get it. I kind of feel like it's overboard, if I'm honest. Like we've mentioned the word Trump once or twice in other videos relating to OJ or Diddy or anything else. And the entire video has been blocked from any kind of promotional spend because it's been deemed election finance or election advertising.
Because it's an election season.
Yeah. So it's saying RJ and Tony are now doing election advertising because they just mentioned the word Trump once.
Right.
Or even president or something.
Right. And they think it's interference of some kind under the
weird.
Elections Act.
We're getting off topic, but we're just excited that we can talk about elections and President Trump without this thing getting pulled from the internet or demonetized or promoted.
I feel like we're officially in America before we were in Russia, where the government was watching our words, and God forbid if we said like Trump or we said Biden, we were talking about this. It felt like communist Russia.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But now we're free. We're unshackled, and we could talk about it because
at least in this video. At least in this video.
Yeah, because we're not advertising with YouTube anymore, and we're just free to say what we want to say.
And maybe the evidence of that will be if people just look at the view count of this video, and
they'll see huge difference.
And compare it to the other videos.
A few hundred compared to thousands.
Yeah. But we're free to talk, and that's why we're here. And anyone who cares to listen, you're going to get a real perfect breakdown, a deep breakdown of what's going on with this criminal case in New York against President Trump. What are his chances of winning, losing? How's it going to affect everything? So 2006, he allegedly had an affair with Stormy Daniels, a porn actress, adult film actress, I should say. The next key event was in 2016 when allegedly there was payments made to keep her quiet about that 2006 thing, right? So an event happens in 2006, they get together. 10 years later, money is exchanged for Stormy to not go to the press, to not speak, to kind of clamp down on do I have that correct factually? Yeah. Fast forward to what? 2018, 2 years later, some news outlets start speaking about, hey, there was a hush money payment in 2 years ago in 16. Fast forward a little more, the election's coming up in 2020. Well, he loses the election. Then what happens? We basically get this criminal case filed when? Right before this next election?
Alvin Bragg filed it right after he announced, President Trump announced that he was running again. It was in December 2022 that he announced. So I think it was right after that he announced that he was filing the case. But he remembers something. He was investigating this beforehand. He had Alan Pecker, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. Alan Pecker is the former publisher for National Enquirer. So he was giving grand jury testimony in 2019. So that would make it while President Trump was in office, I think, right? 2019? Is that right?
Yes, till the end
so
of
he's
19.
the president of the United States, and David Pecker has got immunity, so he's cooperating. So it's percolating in the background while President Trump is still in office.
Could it be any possible chance that this prosecution has an intent to interfere with the U.S. elections?
Well, that's what President Trump is saying. He's saying this is alone election interference.
Crazy, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of saying that half seriously because I guess maybe there should be this notion that you should be able to bring any criminal cause of action anytime, regardless of political implications, just to make sure you bring the bad guys down. Maybe. Probably. But it seems like the timing shows that there is maybe political motivation behind this actual prosecution in New York City.
Well, every politician will tell you there's political motivation on every criminal complaint that's filed against a politician, either during office or after office. And there might be some truth to that if you think about it. You know, if they weren't on the radar, you know, nobody would know what they're doing. President Trump is clearly on the radar, and there's a lot of enemies against President Trump. And just for everybody to know, we're going to get a lot of feedback on this about, oh, he's clearly a Trump supporter or clearly a Biden supporter. I'm what I classify myself as a political atheist. I'm in the stands watching the game, but I'm not involved. And I'm just making what I consider neutral observations from a legal standpoint. Sometimes they may be biased, and it may look like I'm protecting President Trump or protecting President Biden, but I'm trying to stay very neutral and just give you my opinion based on the law.
Great. Since we're exposing ourselves, I'm waiting for somebody better on on either side. Give me somebody better. It's probably not going to come.
Well, that's all of America.
It's not going to come, but
yeah.
I'm waiting.
It's like, these are the best players we have. Come on.
Yeah. Flawed all around. Okay, so 36 counts criminal charges were brought against President Trump in New York City for document manipulation. What was it called?
Which case?
This criminal case in New York City.
This is falsification of business records.
Falsification of business records.
Yeah.
36 counts?
34.
34.
Yeah.
I read through them. It was like,
same thing.
This check signature, this stub being filed, this invoice from Michael Cohen, this note in the ledger saying legal services when in fact it was probably reimbursement for hush money payments.
Yeah.
So they're saying, just for people at home to understand, President Trump did these 34 things bad. None of them are a felony. Most of them are a misdemeanor, as I understand it, right? Misdemeanor.
Majority, yeah.
So that's not good enough for the prosecution. They want, of course, like any prosecution, they want to go further. So they need, through this other criminal statute, they're going to try to bring in an intent, not just the intent that goes with these 34, right, RJ? Let's break it down for people. So there's sort of like a lower level of intent that goes with these 34, which says, hey, you committed fraud. It's a misdemeanor. Like, you falsified business records. You wrote the wrong thing on that check and you knew it. You put legal services and you knew it was not legal services. Okay? Right?
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Those are all misdemeanors. But for Alvin Bragg and for the prosecution, it's like, fine, we're going to try to prove that he committed these misdemeanors, and then we're going to try to escalate because we're going to show intent. We're going to show that he committed these misdemeanors, this falsification of a check, this false this false ledger entry, but he did it with intent to commit another crime.
And that crime is, the important crime is interference with election laws.
Right. And they call that the predicate crime because it's like, hey, you want to escalate this misdemeanor to a felony, you need to base it on another crime. He had to have an intent to commit another crime, predicate crimes. There's many of them, right? They're kind of like, now let us present you with which of the crimes we want to bootstrap to. And you just mentioned the biggest one.
Yeah, it's election law, but they're just using that as a predicate, not as a count. So what they're doing is they're charging him with falsification of business records in the first degree.
Sort of here, yeah.
Yeah, and just for anybody, the law geeks out there, that's under Penal Code Section 17510, and they're basically saying that when you alleged that the money you paid this person was a quote unquote legal expense, you lied.
You lied. You committed fraud.
And that's fraud. And not only was it fraud, we're contending, President Trump, that you did it because you didn't want the public to know.
So far, it's a misdemeanor, but now
Right.
you're about to escalate.
I'm escalating it because you were trying to make sure the American public didn't know you had a girlfriend named, I think her name was Karen McDougal.
Still a misdemeanor. I'm waiting for you to escalate.
And Stormy Daniels.
Yeah.
Who was a former porn star, and you figure those two things would be very bad for your campaign.
Boom, escalated just because you linked it to the campaign.
Now we're going to make a connection. We allege that you gave signals to your then attorney, who is now our witness, Michael Cohen, who's going to testify that he communicated with the National Enquirer publisher, and you basically paid Stormy Daniels off to make sure the people didn't know about your sexual shenanigans. And that makes it a felony because you're violating election law.
Yeah. So paying her off would have been okay in terms of election issues, paying her off for any reason. But the reason, if you're going to say the reason they did that is to help his campaign, to stop the news from coming out, to not embarrass his campaign.
Well, yes. Let me be clear. So David Pecker actually testified. He already took the stand. And they asked him.
Who is he?
He's the owner of, he was a former publisher of National Enquirer, which is a gossip magazine.
For sure.
You know, when there's sightings of Martians, it'll be on there. You know, we know who killed Kennedy, they'll be on there. And
Martian impregnates Kim Kardashian.
Something like that, yeah. So it's these really horrible tabloid magazines that are sold in a supermarket. Everybody probably knows what it is.
Yeah.
And Pecker was the publisher back in the day, and he worked with Trump almost as an arm of Trump to do what he wanted back in the day. And the reason he did that is because Trump would dish him some dirt on people that he knew, and they'd expose him in the National Enquirer. And he would help Trump by making sure Trump doesn't look bad. So it was a reciprocal relationship. And when he ran for president, they had a meeting about it. And what came to head was when Karen McDougal went on national TV with Anderson Cooper right before the trial. And this is right after the Access Hollywood tape. So he's got that bruise on him, right? He said you could grab him by the you-know-what. So he's already bruised up from that. And now this is coming out. So Trump calls up his, David Pecker and basically says, according to David Pecker's testimony, wait, we paid this lady not to talk. Why is this happening? That's number one. And the other thing is, the allegation is, which is not so bad, by the way, that Karen McDougal is not bad. The bad one is when David Pecker testified that I believe that Trump was not protecting his family when he tried to snuff the story out. I think that he was basically trying to do it for his campaign. And they asked him, why do you think that? Because his family was never mentioned by Michael Cohen, and the timing of it, Michael kept calling me back and forth in 2016 when he was already the president, and also Sarah Sanders Huckabee, who was the former White House.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Huckabee Sanders. She was involved with Hope Hicks, who was his
press
secretary to squash.
Or was she just a White House aide? I don't know.
Yeah, she was working in the White House. So they were working together, according to Pecker, to squash the story. So that means that President Trump was using basically White House time, taxpayer employees to squash a story. So it all goes back to what was his intent? Was it to stop the shame from his family, or was it really to stop people from voting for him during the presidency while he was running for president?
Okay, and let's try to steel man the opposite side. He's going to have to say, I guess he could potentially, you tell me, is there any argument the Trump team can make, like, no, that never happened, there's no such payment, or is that out the door?
Michael Cohen made the payment, so they're gonna say,
we don't know why he did that.
Well, no, they're gonna say that he did it. He did it for his boss. He adored his boss. He did it to protect him, and
he's a loyal guy.
President Trump had no idea that he was doing that. He told him. In fact, if you listen to the audio tape, Michael Cohen did a horrible thing, by the way. And I don't do this. No criminal defense attorney that I've ever heard does this, but he recorded conversations between him and President Trump, which I think was, horrible. And he got disbarred because of it. He got disbarred because he went to prison for a criminal complaint that was filed against him. This is the complaint actually that was filed against him. Violation of election laws and so forth.
Yeah.
So Michael Cohen was the guy that put the $130,000. He paid out of his account. He opened up a bank account the next day after this came out in 2016, which the timeline is very important. President Trump is the president of the United States. Michael Cohen is opening up a bank account
under an LLC from out of state. He sets up a whole scheme by which, a business platform, and then $130,000 goes from there to Stormy Daniels.
That's right. And so they're saying that basically who directed that? Well, it must have been Donald Trump. Now, the problem is Michael Cohen has already been convicted. He has that blemish against him that he allegedly committed perjury. Or not allegedly, he did. But the thing is, David Pecker is all they need. All they need is David Pecker because...
But David Pecker, as an executive at this at the publisher, his opinion as to what was in President Trump's mind is enough to have the intent to commit a crime, that intent to link the motive here by the Trump team or by Trump himself to his election campaign.
They're doing it, yeah, circumstantially.
Circumstantially.
Right. So Michael Cohen's going to testify, and I know this because I've listened to his podcast. I've read his books. Revenge, by the way, which will be used to impeach him. Isn't it true, sir, that you don't like your former boss? He owes you money. You went to jail. You're blaming him. I mean, there's a million different things.
Ways to attack his credibility.
Yeah. So,
because he's one of the main witnesses against President Trump. He's the one saying Trump ordered this whole thing, and he did it for the intent of the election campaign.
Right. And the intent is the key. So how is Michael Cohen going to be able to prove that that's what his intent was when on the audio tape, Michael Cohen cuts off President Trump when he says, let's just pay cash, which is bad, by the way. Okay. So,
yeah, now you're hiding the transaction.
Who pays cash $130,000 unless you're doing something illegal? That
for sure.
That doesn't sound good to the jurors alone.
Right.
But let's go past that. Michael Cohen says, no, I'll take care of it. So Trump could just say, well, I thought he took care of it. I didn't know what he did.
Exactly. That could be his out there.
That could be his out, but the
intent is so key.
But the counter could be that, you heard Trump say by circumstantial evidence, let's pay him cash. So Michael carried out what Trump wanted to do initially. Instead of paying cash, Michael went, opened up a bank account. President Trump didn't stop him, and he paid Stormy Daniels, and lo and behold, it went away.
Right. Did Michael Cohen do that on his own behest? Did he have that idea to please his boss? Did he want to be like a good mob henchman type of character? Or did President Trump order it? Or did he implicitly order it? Or did he just not stop it?
Well, ask yourself, and Michael Cohen said this on his podcast, whose benefit was it for? It was for the benefit in direction of and in furtherance of a campaign that was going on. So who is the person that was most likely to do it?
I would say Trump benefits from her staying quiet. Maybe it helps with his relationship at home. Maybe it's just a stain he doesn't want to talk about with the kids, and the younger kid.
Yeah.
Maybe he's embarrassed in front of his daughters. I'm reaching.
It could be all of the above.
I'm reaching right now to try to steelman it for him.
But Trump, all he has to say is, look, I didn't tell him to do this. And if Michael Cohen fell on the grenade, if he jumped on the grenade for me, that's great for him. But I was doing it for my family. That's right. I think that's all he has to do to get a hung jury. I don't think he's going to get a not guilty. I'll tell you why. The demographic is really bad. He's in Manhattan, and when he says it's rigged, what he's trying to say is the majority of the jurors are typically, especially in Manhattan,
liberal.
They're Democrats. It doesn't mean that they won't give him a fair shake, but he just thinks like, I'm in enemy territory right now. So
he is in enemy territory.
So to convince 12 people in New York that he didn't do this with the intent will be a tall order, but I think there'll be one or two honest Democrats,
holdouts,
that'll say, you know what, I'm not going to convict this man because
I don't know what's in his head.
The intent is the tough part. Yeah, he was trying to do stuff, but I'm not so sure if he was trying to hide it from his family.
Right.
And even if he was, did he tell Michael Cohen to do that? I don't know if Michael Cohen took it upon himself to do that to protect Trump, which the intent would be a little, hard to connect.
Right. How many presidents do you think have had mistresses?
I don't know a lot, but he's not being accused of having a mistress.
Right. But how many presidents do you think have had mistresses?
Well, I'm sure Lincoln didn't have it. Honest Abe didn't have it. I'm sure George Washington didn't have.
Okay, we're at 43 so far.
I know John Adams did, and he was an honorable man.
Okay, so we're going to keep counting down.
Thomas Jefferson liked to womanize.
A dozen of them had girls.
At least 10 presidents.
Okay, so and did any of them try to convince or persuade their mistress, their confidant on the side, to just stay quiet about it?
I don't know.
I don't either. It's conjecture. I'm going to guess they did. If they did they do it to help their marriage? Did they do it to not piss off their wife, their kids?
How about
or did they do it to get reelected? That's the key question.
How about the truth, which is somewhere in between? How about both? They were embarrassed and they didn't want it to affect our campaign, which could be exactly what's going on with Trump. It's not. It's
easy to believe that.
100%.
Yeah, it's a win-win. Like, it calms things down at home.
Right.
Kids don't have to face it in school.
That's right.
And it helps me in my election campaign. Let's go for it. 130.
But they have to parse that. So the jury now has to say, is there any part of that relates to his campaign? If there is any part of it, even 1% of it, then he could be found guilty.
Wow. So any aspect of that intent, some of it was to protect the wife, the kids, home life, the brand, the embarrassment.
That's fine.
But if any ounce of that touches on, hey, it's also good for the election campaign, boom, that's intent.
But how do you prove that?
How do you prove it? You don't have him saying that. What's the legal standard by which they have to prove that? Is it beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yeah, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, which isn't all doubt.
Very high.
It's not all doubt. It's what they call an abiding conviction of the truth of the charge, which means that if you don't think there's any doubt, that's common sense.
Any doubt.
And that's common sense reasonable. It's got to be reasonable, not all doubt.
Not all.
So I would ask as a juror, is it possible, this is the question I would ask, is it possible that he was only concerned about his family and embarrassment and not about the campaign? If the answer is yes, if they take that poll,
is it reasonably possible?
Right. If the answer is yes, that could be reasonable. That could be not guilty right there. But
that'll get less and less believable to the jury depending on the evidence they see.
Yeah,
David Pecker saying, dude, I had multiple conversations about this. It was about the election.
Well, David Pecker is not saying it's about the election. David Pecker is saying that there was a lot of frustration on the part of Michael Cohen when he met with him at Trump in the business meeting somewhere, and he was asking Michael Cohen, can we just make this go away? Can he pay for it? I'm not a bank. I'm not going to keep paying Donald Trump every time something goes away. And Michael Cohen was very anxious and stressed, and he kept going on the phone and coming back, going on the phone and coming back. And this was during the campaign part. And he said Michael never said anything about the family being embarrassed. So, it was clear to David that it was about the campaign, the election campaign. But once again, if you're a good lawyer, like Todd Blanche is an amazing lawyer, I think he's going to be able to spin it and say, look, this is all conjecture. This is all speculation. Is it possible he wanted it? Sure. Is he happy that it happened? Sure. But the intent is what's important. It's not, did he intend to do this? It's not the after effect. Sure, the collateral consequence is something that he was happy with, of course, but that doesn't mean he ordered it.
Right. Let's look at what the attorney for Trump, Todd Blanche, said, because I was just scrolling through some of the opening statements, hoping to see what's the big headline here, right? Actually, let's start with the prosecutors. Here's what the prosecutors say is the big headline to the jury to open it up. No politician wants bad press, but the evidence at trial will show that this was not spin or communication strategy. This was a planned, coordinated, long-running conspiracy to influence the 2016 election, to help Donald Trump get elected through illegal expenditures to silence people who had something bad to say about his behavior. And he adds, it was election fraud, pure and simple. That's what the prosecution says.
Yeah, and the defense came out in the cross and countered that by saying, you know what? What we call it when we do negative stories and you suppress stories, we call it democracy.
Democracy. That's what they called it.
Yeah.
The defense team said it's called democracy.
Yeah.
They put something sinister on this idea as if it was a crime, but you, the jury, will learn that it's not. And, blah, blah, blah. They will argue that the very point of a presidential campaign is to influence an election.
They lost me on that one, to be honest with you.
That sounded
very straight out of Russia, the way you said it.
Okay, but if you have a candidate in front of the cameras and you're about to roll, do you come and wipe, like if he's got a Cheeto stuck on the side of his face, you're going to wipe it off and make him look better? You're doing that to influence his chances in the election.
Right.
So anything you do presidentially communicating, right? Like you create an ad, you want him to look good. You want him to say good things. If he says dumb things, you edit it out.
Yeah.
You're trying to influence an election.
That's fine. But when you use an instrument, like a document, and you lie on the document,
Fraudulent.
which has penalties of perjury assigned to that, languages that say that you are saying that you didn't do this for the campaign. In other words, Donald Trump signed off on documents that said this was a legal expense that he paid Michael Cohen, but that wasn't true. So if that's not true, it's a technical violation. It's a technical misdemeanor.
I agree with that.
Technical.
Can I slightly, as a layperson here, I mean, can I just criticize a little bit? And why then does the prosecution make it sound like this was a planned, coordinated, long-running conspiracy to influence the 2016 election? Why make it about that verb influence? Why don't they say this was fraudulent attempt to affect the election?
Well, they are saying
they do say that later.
They are saying that
they're kind of making it seem like the conspiracy is just to influence the election.
Well, that's a bigger picture. The predicate, like you said, is to influence the election, and the underlying crime is basically using checks as a legal expense when they weren't. When you're basically paying somebody off, that's the misdemeanor.
That's the misdemeanor. It's lying about why you paid.
Right.
Michael Cohen.
I mean, it's like me saying I threw a pool party. And I spent $50,000 and I had models and everything. And hey, I'm promoting my law firm. You know, that doesn't fly.
Have you ever tried that?
No, it won't fly. You'll get audited and you'll get in trouble. So you can't put a legal expense. If you're paying a porn star to be quiet, that's not a legal expense. So that could be a misdemeanor.
Okay. But to sort of come at it from the other side, we don't know that President Trump himself wrote in the ledger legal expenses, knowing that was hush money payment that he was reimbursing Michael Cohen for.
But he signed off on the paper at the end of it when he submitted the documents. At the end of every document that you submit, whether it's a tax or anything you submit, bank loan.
Well, he signed off that it was legal expenses. So he said, yes, I see that $130K went to Michael Cohen.
Right.
He is a lawyer. He's my lawyer.
Right.
You put it under the line legal expenses. I get it. Can he just be like, I didn't know anything else, man? And also my executives at the Trump company are the ones who filled that ledger out, who put the checks away, who pulled the stub off.
Absolutely. He could do that. And I think he's hinting that he's going to do that. He's saying he's going to testify. If he takes a stand and says...
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he said he's going to... Well, he said it several times. I'm going to take the stand. I don't know if he's going to, because he said that the last time
It might be a threat to the prosecution to change.
He said that at the defamation case. He didn't testify, but he says he's going to testify. And getting back to what you're saying, yeah, he could take the stand and say, look, my lawyer told me to sign. I signed technical.
I signed 1,100 documents a day. It was one of them.
I don't even look at these things, which is not an excuse.
It's not an excuse, but it's also no indication of the intent.
It goes to his intent. Yeah. Exactly. It takes away the intent from the felony, and it's a technical violation, and he gets found guilty of the misdemeanor. Yeah. And then he goes to the public and says, you know what? It was a technical violation. Right. They prosecuted me. Yeah. Mea culpa. Yeah. Let's get on with our lives. Right. Let's go straight to the election. Yeah. And then the public's going to decide, what the hell was that about? Was it about just a misdemeanor? But that's why Alvin Bragg's going for the big one. But
let's talk about what it's about. I keep wanting to break this down. I don't know why I'm geeking out on it, but it's like this thing happened in 2006 where two people slept together, had an affair. It's embarrassing.
It wasn't an affair.
Porn stars involved.
It was not.
Maybe there was sex involved. Maybe there wasn't.
Yeah, sex. Just she said 3 minutes of sex. That's all it was.
Well, they didn't they watch TV together and kind of have a good time. I mean, if you read it, like they sat on the couch, then they moved over here. He likes Shark Week. They watched Shark Week together. She joked. I don't know. I don't know if it was 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 9 minutes. They had a little relationship.
It was 1 day maximum.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that. I have no clue, but like, okay. A fling happened between him and this girl.
Right.
This lady, this woman.
Right.
10 years later, he paid money, or we think he orchestrated a payment of money through Michael Cohen, his lawyer.
Right.
And then, even then, we're still at the level of, we're still not at the most critical wrongdoing in this case. It's not the sleeping with her. It's not even the paying off. It's not even the orchestrating it through Michael Cohen. It's later in the actual record keeping at Trump organization, reimbursing Michael Cohen, still okay, but misnoting that reimbursement, putting it under the wrong words.
As a what?
As legal expenses.
That's it. That's the case. That's the case. Now the better question is, do people get prosecuted for this? I did some research on it. I couldn't find any people getting prosecuted for this.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah,
like,
you know what they usually
do?
For
misfiling legal or misnoting legal
Yeah, they
expenses?
usually send you letters saying you misfiled, you owe us this, or you can't deduct it. I mean, to go straight to war without like a warning, just doing that.
That's why it's so interesting, because in any other case, you would have been looking at this New York statute saying, oh, they misnoted that as legal expenses. Bastards, we got them. And you'd get him for a misdemeanor.
If he was a regular guy. Yeah.
Regular guy. Any other case, you'd get him for the misdemeanor of falsifying business records, right? Yes. But there's this other statute Alvin Bragg's got, and it's the prosecutor's got. And it says, if he did that little thing, that misdemeanor, that misfiling, that misnoting in the ledger, that falsification of business records, but he did it with this intent to commit a crime, find me a crime. What's the crime? They're looking at different crimes that he would have intended, and they've landed on, we think, the major one, election interference or election campaign violations, crimes.
Right.
Both at a state level, that's a crime. At a federal level, that's a crime. There's different guardrails involved. There's different sort of like minimum amounts you need and all that. So they're just saying, if we can just show that he intended one of those crimes, either a state level or a federal level election interference of some sort, then we're upgrading this baby from a misdemeanor to a felony, and we're going to have him criminally prosecuted. That's what's going on. Just so people understand.
Yeah, the felony,
it is legally correct.
Felony is a stretch. I'll go so far as to say I would be shocked if they found him guilty on that, because I think it's going to be split. It's not a slam dunk by any means at all. Now, the misdemeanor, I've always said that, the misdemeanor is a lot easier to prove. But who cares about the misdemeanor? And, the TV...
Nobody cares.
And, well, the TV makes it look like he's going to go to jail if he gets convicted. 34 counts, looking at 4 years. Do you think that a judge is going to send somebody to jail for 4 years for writing a wrong ledger? And think about the practicalities of putting a president inside a jail with Secret Service. They have to go to jail with him. So they can't not leave. I mean, this is not one of those cases that's going to make any sense.
So strange.
It's never about that scenario. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I don't even care if he's found guilty on the felony. They're not going to put him in jail.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So they're bringing this misdemeanor, and they're saying we're also going to show he intended a crime, and therefore we're going to upgrade it to a felony, so to speak. I'm simplifying.
Yeah.
Does he just need to intend that crime, or does he actually need to be proven to have committed that crime as well?
No, it's the intent.
So why are they going to all this trouble to prove election interference? They just need to prove he just tried to do it.
Because they need Michael Cohen and they need David Pecker to show circumstantially that they were an arm of what Trump wanted to do.
So it was actually, in effect, it was happening. So some of the actual occurrence of that crime helps for the intent.
Right. Think of it like Cohen likes to making him analogous to a mafia boss. Mm-hmm. You know how a mafia boss would want to kill somebody, but the mafia boss isn't going to sit down and say, I want to have Tony killed.
Right.
The mafia boss might come down, take a look at you and say, RJ, I don't like that guy. Mm-hmm. I make him go away.
I'm not saying anything should happen to him. I'm not saying he should go camping and have an accident. I'm just saying.
Why they wouldn't even say it like that. They would just, it's just very subtle. Like
clearly, I am very bad at being a mafia.
I don't like that guy. That could be enough. I don't like that guy. That's translated to he's got to go. So what Michael Cohen is saying, that when he said, I'll take care of it, he knew what Trump wanted, because Trump talks in code, basically. He's going to testify that Trump never says what he really wants. He just says to you in innuendo. Like, for example, you guys figure it out. He made Alan Weissenberg, who's the CFO of Trump Organization. When this came up, he went back there and, you guys figure it out. You guys go back there and figure out means to Michael Cohen, we needed to do what we needed to do to make it go away. So that's what is going to testify, that's the language that he speaks, the code language. The problem is, though, Michael Cohen is a convicted felon, and he's been, convicted of lying. So he's got to overcome that.
He's got a personal vendetta against Trump.
There's a little bit of things to work with. Todd Blanche could say, isn't it true that you don't, appreciate my client? You wrote a book about him. You have a whole show against him. So, but, they don't need Michael Cohen. All he needs is David Pecker, I think. I think the best thing to do with the prosecutor, if you want to convict President Trump, is say, listen, forget Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen just basically corroborates what David Pecker says. David Pecker doesn't want to say anything bad about Donald Trump.
Does he have any motivation to lie?
Well,
let's find
none.
one. There's got to be one.
None, because because Todd Blanche is basically throwing him softballs, is what we call in cross-examination. He's not going toe-to-toe with him. The only thing that he's asking Todd Blanche is his memory. Is it possible you don't remember? Is it possible that, Trump didn't say this? That's all they're saying, because I don't know if you saw in the news that in one of his rallies, Trump's rallies, he said, I like David Pecker. He's a nice guy. That alone also was a contempt filing. The judge was like, you communicated with him.
Influencing a witness?
You're influencing. That's up on right now for contempt. They're thinking of, but he's signaling to them like a mafia boss. Like, he's a nice guy means, keep, helping me out.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And he said on the stand, he's still a friend of Donald Trump. The only reason that Pecker took the deal is because he said to Michael Cohen, isn't this a violation of election law? And then Michael Cohen allegedly said, we have Jeff Sessions in the back of our pocket, who was the former attorney general at the time. So Michael Cohen's basically telling him, don't worry about it. We could sweep this underneath the rug. So, you got...
But what is Pecker testifying that, in his opinion, Donald Trump knew that this was in furtherance of the election campaign? In his opinion.
In his opinion, he
heard things
based on the lack of not hearing anything about the Melania, his family. That was never mentioned.
That's an omission, though.
It's an omission.
Not hearing about it.
Not hearing about it, and combined with the stress of Michael Cohen while he was in the White House, while he was the president, the phone calls that he was getting back and forth, and he was telling him, my boss is not liking this, or something to that effect. His boss is
for the reasons that he's got a campaign coming up, and not for the reasons that his wife's going to slap him in the face?
That's for the jury to decide. Yeah, that's why we're in the jury trial. Welcome to the trial of Donald J. Trump. That's what they're deciding.
That's literally that's what it hinges on, isn't it?
That's what it's hinging on, whether or not he knew and whether or not these orders were carried out by his henchmen.
If he knew, why? What was the intent?
And, I would make an argument again, the same argument. I'd say, you know what? Michael Cohen was a rabid Trump fan, Trump supporter, and he did things on his own volition without the intent of Trump.
Rogue.
All Trump, he went rogue. All Trump wanted was his family not to find out. And was he happy that the government, other people didn't find out about it? Yes, but that was an ancillary benefit. That wasn't the direct benefit. He wasn't asking Michael Cohen to make it go away for the public. He was making it go away for his family. Did the public not know about it? Yeah, but that wasn't his intent. Todd Blanche has got to parse that. And as long as one person believes it on the jury, I think that it's possible.
There's a possibility there. Again, it's like to say this misdemeanor, here we go. We're trying to make it a felony, but the Trump team says, no, he didn't know. Michael Cohen went rogue. Boom.
Right.
You can't upgrade to a felony. Let's try again. We're going to say he knew. Even if they prove he knew. Okay, he knew that Michael Cohen was going to do that. Then the Trump team's going to say, hold up, fine. But it was to protect his family, man. It had nothing to do with the election. It was for his family. Boom, they can block it from upgrading again. But if they can't do those, he gets convicted.
Yeah, but also let me throw a little snag into that, a little curveball. I think that Trump that also Pecker testified on cross when Pecker was peppered with questions by the cross.
Pecker was peppered with questions. Pecker was peppered with questions. Pepper was peppered with questions.
By the cross-exam, by the attorney when he was asked a lot of questions. I'm sorry.
That's great. It's a great statement. Pecker was peppered.
Sorry. It sounds ridiculous. But I didn't realize I was saying that. But when he was asked...
we're getting better at this.
When he was asking questions regarding that, he said that I spoke to Trump on the phone. And he never mentioned his family. He never mentioned it. So basically,
Still, a lack of evidence is not evidence.
right. That's my argument on behalf of Trump. I would say lack of doesn't mean he intended it, but it's going to come down to Michael Cohen saying to them, oh no, Trump basically spoke to me. And when he said it, I've been working for him for 10 years. I know what he meant. So that's what it's going to hinge upon. And that's why, by the way, Trump thinks it's rigged, because you got somebody with a former ex-gruntled employee that's got a lot of gripe against him. David Pecker, we don't know. He's a neutral guy, and that's what you got to do to diffuse him.
Is there an additional argument for the Trump team to say, okay, he knew, but it's not to protect his campaign? You want to know why? Nobody cares if he slept with a prostitute. You want to know why?
That's a great argument.
You want to know? Nobody cares that he said, grab him by the junk, and he was talking about females, and it was a crude thing to say, but honestly, things that guys would say when they're hanging around with each other, if they're just
locker talk is what he
locker room talk. Totally true. I mean, guys say crazy shit. It's not no disrespect to women. They're just broing out. He did that. He said that. It didn't tank his campaign. If people found out, honestly, that, by the way, did you know President Trump slept with a prostitute one time? Or I shouldn't say prostitute, slept with a adult film star. Do you think it would tank his campaign? Do you think anybody that likes Trump would hesitate to like him?
Well, the prosecutor's saying basically it was cumulative, and that at the time that came out, that grab him by the, so-and-so comment really hurt him. And then he was upset that this came out after. He felt that he couldn't sustain too bad, news articles.
His team's going to argue all we ever do is double down.
Right.
So we're not afraid to double down.
That's going to be the argument. But according to Pecker, he's testifying that Trump was really upset, that he said, I thought we squashed the McDougal story. How can she talk? And it was during the campaign part, and it sounded like Trump was stressed.
That sounds bad.
Never meant, yeah. And
that's first person testimony now of what they heard President Trump say, which is, why is she talking?
Right. Why is she talking? Never mentions my wife is going to be upset. Never, you think common sense, Melania is going to kill me argument will come out at some point.
I'm not sure you would say that to your staff.
Okay. Fair enough.
You might be thinking Melania is going to kill me. I don't necessarily need you to be saying that to your campaign manager.
Well, that's why it's going to trial. We don't know, don't know the intent. It's all circumstantial evidence.
We're trying to get into his head through the legal process without him talking. But he may talk.
Connecting the dots. I'd be shocked.
You'll be shocked, yeah.
You know why? Because it's not because he can't explain it, but because he can't be controlled. And I don't know. He keeps saying he's going to take the stand. So I don't know.
So imagine that this doesn't stick and he's found not guilty. What a tailwind for his campaign.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, there's still 3 more criminal charges.
Well, I'll take a guess. If he's found not guilty, I think there'll be a lot of independents that'll feel rejuvenated to want to vote for him and think that he was, done dirty, as they say on the streets. Mm-hmm. So that'll help him. If he loses, then he'll probably keep his base, but he'll probably lose a lot of independence.
We explained the term done dirty in a legal sense in criminal justice in depth in our OJ episode. With Detective Mark Furman.
Yeah.
I have another question. Why the heck are they not actually bringing charges against him for those other crimes? Why are they doing this falsifying documents thing and then pointing towards this crime of election interference or election campaign? Why don't they just bring that charge?
I don't think they have enough to bring that charge.
So okay, if they can't bring the charge itself, how can they point to it from this lower area of the misdemeanor and try to use it to elevate this misdemeanor into a crime? You can't just bring the crime itself.
Think of it like an attempt. You don't have to kill somebody to attempt to kill somebody.
Got it. That makes sense. So they're trying to get at the intent. They don't need that crime to have actually effectuated. Right. And therefore they're like, we're not going to charge you because that didn't happen.
Yes. And it's harder to prove, and it muddies up this case. Prosecutors like pretty much slam dunks. They don't want to, if they put that charge in there, like a broad general, he affected the election campaign, that will be, first of all, a federal crime, right? Federal, because it violates federal laws. Yes, New York state laws also.
Both.
But federal also. So yes. It would be a tall order. I think this is a lot easier to get him to just convicted of 34 counts of technical violations.
Interesting, because if they bring the federal crime, it gets preempted. It goes to federal court or something.
It could.
It leaves New York almost.
No. They could still prosecute in New York and prosecute in federal court. All I'm saying is if there was a New York a statute regarding election laws and they didn't bring it, my experience would tell me, my conjecture would tell me that they're not doing it because they don't have enough evidence and they don't want to muddy up the other counts that they know they could prove.
Yeah. I think that was one of the concerns I was reading about. And then also that it may get preempted into federal, not court, but federal. Maybe the law would change and they'd have to go prosecute it under the federal statute and not the New York
The federal government would be the Department of Justice. The New York government would be the Attorney General's office. So the DOJ would do it on the federal level, and the Attorney General would do it on the state level.
Right. So they don't feel like they have enough. That's why they're not bringing it.
That's my.
But they do feel that they're going to convince 12 jurors that he intended that, regardless of whether it happened or
they're using that to explain why he did that. Yeah. And and the jurors might actually, it's like going fishing. They might bite with the bait. They might think, yeah, that's why he did it. But again, you pounce on Michael Cohen. You say, you know what? This guy's not believable. He's not trustworthy. He's very inconsistent. He's out for revenge. I mean, he literally has a book called Revenge, and he says he's going to get revenge on Donald Trump. Yeah. And in fact, I don't know if you remember, this whole investigation started with him testifying in front of Congress when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez asked him, where would we find all these crimes, Mr. Cohen? And he literally spelled it out. So Michael Cohen put Trump on the radar, and the government is forced to investigate the president because he went on national television in front of Congress telling them that allegedly he's doing these illegal acts. So I would ask Michael Cohen, Mr. Cohen, isn't it true that you were upset? You testified in front of Congress right after you got out of jail and be like, I wasn't upset. No, I wasn't upset. But you testified, didn't you? Yes. And you mentioned all these things to Congress, didn't you? Yes. And your intent was to make sure that Mr. Trump was arrested and charged with a crime. No, that wasn't my intent. It was just for justice. But you knew that ultimately he would be arrested. Yes, I did. And ultimately, that's what you want. When you say justice, you want him to go to jail, don't you?
Well, yeah.
He's going to say, yeah, well, yeah, I do.
It's one and the same with justice.
It's not up to me. It's not up to me. I just want. So if they keep going over that he's got a vendetta, that this is all a vendetta, Michael, Cohen spearheaded this thing, I think that he may be able to get a hung jury because David Pecker's pretty neutral.
What if it's not a vendetta per se, but it's just part of his job because he did take a deal. He did take a plea deal of some kind. I mean, he pled guilty to many charges. And how many years did he do? 3, 5?
He did. I think they released him because of COVID. He had a 3-year stint and they got him out early, 1.5 years.
Even 3 was a short sentence given everything he'd done. If you looked at the sentencing guidelines, right? Did he take a deal of some kind? Tony, he pled guilty.
The sentencing guidelines are so strict. I'm not going to lie to you.
He pled guilty.
He did. And, when you get into sentencing guidelines, that's really a touchy-feely thing for me because they're so strict. The federal government is so damn strict.
Why was his sentence so short?
I don't think it was short. 3 years in federal prison that's short.
I don't know.
It's for first time.
There were many counts of criminal wrongdoing.
I know, but you know what? Where I'm coming from, I like to think R.J. Manuelian has lived a law-abiding life. So if I make a mistake now, you're going to put me in prison for 3 years.
I get it.
I don't get a second chance. I don't get to do community service.
Is it his first ever wrongdoing?
Yes. He was a lawyer. And by the way, the law considers collateral consequences as a punishment. The guy lost his law license. Yeah. That alone is like complete punishment for the guy. He can't practice anymore. Yeah. Huge. The federal judges, in my experience, always consider that. They say, well, maybe we shouldn't send him to prison. Yeah. He lost his everything is work for. So again, I'm not a Michael Cohen fan. Opposite, I think what he did was pretty scumbaggish to President Trump, recording him and stuff. But on the flip side, I don't think they should give him 3 years. Just the way I don't think they should give Donald Trump any time if he loses. I think that's ridiculous also.
There was a loose sort of precedent to this case, which was former Senator and presidential candidate John Edwards. And just to remind everybody, he was accused of, he did have an affair. He maybe even fathered a child with that woman, but then he had a campaign aide or some kind of staffer pretend to have fathered that child. Stuff like that happened. He paid some expenses for them to fly around to evade the press. At least these are the allegations. And it was coming up on election time, so they tried to get him in a similar way. They tried to get him criminally liable for interfering with the election, with this motivation of election.
No, he was accused of campaign finance violations.
Same thing, right? Same
no,
thing.
that's federal court. No, it's not.
Well,
Completely different. Campaign violation and business record.
No, I get it.
Ledger is different. So they're accusing him of soliciting nearly $1 million from wealthy donors to hide his affair.
Okay, but let's be clear. Yes, they're charging Donald Trump with falsifying business records, but they're really bootstrapping it up to that.
Right, they're bootstrapping it, but with Edwards, they didn't bootstrap it.
No, they brought the actual.
They brought the actual,
case.
actual count.
So they brought that count. The jury ended up hung. He was acquitted. He did not get found guilty.
He was acquitted on one count of receiving illegal campaign donations and then a mistrial on the other 5 charges. And then the prosecution did it and basically dropped the case out.
So he wasn't found guilty.
Right.
So that's one bit of precedence we have. What's the differences you think between that case? I could think of one. He had a dying wife who sadly was passing away of cancer, and his claim from his defense was, listen, guys, he did have this affair. He did father this child out of wedlock.
Yeah.
He's not a perfect person, but he committed this offense of paying or whatever to protect his wife. She's passing away. He didn't want her to hear about this.
Yeah, and that's you hit the nail on the head. I have notes on this. In my opinion, the 2 cases were basically similar because they were the hush money payment in the Edwards case and the Trump case. Both were being used for campaign purposes, and they're alleging for personal reasons. Both of them are saying for personal reasons. So Trump's team, just like Edwards' team, is basically saying that the payment to Daniels was to spare his family from embarrassment rather than influence the election. And those aren't the only 2 differences, Tony. The timeline is very interesting. In that case, the girl who was being accused of having an affair, I think her name was Riley Hunter. Mm-hmm. So Hunter received money over an extended period of time, including after Edwards had suspended his campaign. So while a one-time payment was made to Daniels just ahead of Election Day.
So you're saying Edwards' campaign was over, that was not even a motivation, and yet more hush money payments went,
right,
strengthening the case that the hush money wasn't really about the election.
Right, but in this case, there was a one-time payment to Daniels just right before the election.
Looks worse. The timing looks worse.
Those are the timelines important, yeah.
And I remember reading about in the Edwards case, the person testifying against Edwards seemed less credible to the jury, seemed to have a motivation to lie. They may have gotten full immunity, if I remember correctly. So when you receive full immunity and you're on the stand, the other side goes, listen, dude, you're here because you got bought out. Like, they're not prosecuting you. You got full immunity, right? So you have all the reason in the world to lie and to try to frame this on Edwards, or else you might go down.
Right. But switching to Trump, yeah.
Now, does Cohen have that or not?
No.
He already did time.
Pecker has it. And Pecker's a friend. So
he has full immunity?
He has full immunity and is a friend. So it's weird. He's getting immunity and he likes the guy that is testifying against and is saying, understand, I like you, buddy.
It's really strange.
I like you. I'm just telling you what you said to me. So that's kind of convincing, no?
Yeah.
You got a guy that likes the other guy and is like, I'm just telling you what
it's more convincing. Yeah.
Very convincing.
He just doesn't want to commit perjury. He's afraid.
Right. Because they could still charge him. They could pull that immunity away from him. And that's going to be a cross-examination question. Isn't it true, Mr. Pecker, that you have immunity right now? Yes, I do. And isn't it true that you have to be honest? Yes. In fact, if the prosecution doesn't believe that you are testifying honestly, isn't it true that you signed a contract that says that your immunity prosecution deal could be taken away from you? Well, yes, that's true. So sitting here in court today, you're conscious of that, aren't you? Yes, I am. So you establish with Pecker that he likes him, but he's in parameters and is not going to say anything that's going to be helpful to the prosecution. That's the only thing he could say is that he wasn't really, he wasn't there to smash Trump, but he wasn't there to say anything bad for Trump. But the thing is, Michael Cohen is going to be there to connect the dots.
But his motivations are a little more sus.
It's suspect, but doesn't mean he's not being truthful. You could still be convicted of perjury.
You got to convince the jury.
And yeah, the jury could decide, yeah, he's a convicted perjurer, but I believe him on this issue.
You would have to believe Michael Cohen that he knows that President Trump's intent was to commit those crimes in falsifying these records, and that he knew about the falsifying.
And the way he's going to do that is because, again, if you believe Michael Cohen, that he's going to say that he worked for him for 10 years and that he never, ever said anything to you directly. Everything was in code, just like mafia. So,
but yet you know what's in his mind.
Yeah, you know what's in your mind. He'll say, for example, I'm not going to pay for this contractor, and then his lawyer would say, well, you can't do that, and he'll say, go figure it out. Figure it out. Or I'm not doing this. Or I'm not signing this. He was taught. Trump was taught by a pretty aggressive lawyer by the name of Ronald Cohen. I don't know if you know. Ronald Cohen was Senator McCarthy's right-hand personal assistant. The McCarthy hearings. Do you remember when they called everybody communist, the Red Scare?
Yeah.
Well, McCarthy's protege was Trump's lawyer. I don't know if you know that.
During what period of time?
The 70s and 80s.
Okay, so he was an earlier lawyer.
Lawyer, and he taught him, never surrender.
Gotcha.
Always go offensive. Always deny, delay.
Having been through the McCarthy era, he understood that if you give even any little apology, any little I'm sorry, any little culpability is a window through which the tsunami will open.
So Michael Cohen was also a Ronald Cohen that was reincarnated. The reason why Michael Cohen is now testifying against him is because when Michael Cohen got arrested, Trump never gave him the pardon that he gave Michael Flynn, that he gave the other people that were involved right away. I actually did a thing on this on the news. I said, I think that he's going to flip on him. I said this on KTLA, and they were like, why? It's like, because he's sending smoke signals to Trump when he got arrested. Are you going to give me immunity or not? And Trump's going on TV, not saying anything.
He kind of left him hanging.
Left him hanging there out to dry. And he was like, you know what?
And you thought he might have given him immunity?
I think that...
Or he could have flipped him if he gave him immunity?
I think that Trump would have eventually, but Michael Cohen was like, when are you going to tell me this? Because
we got to go.
They were going to give Michael Cohen's wife, they were going to file charges against Michael Cohen's wife. At least that's what Michael Cohen said. So Michael Cohen wasn't going to take that chance. He wasn't going to wait in jail for Trump to give him that pardon because his wife was involved. He wanted that pardon now. And when that didn't come, in my opinion, he was like, F this. I'm just going to flip on him. I'm going to prison. I'm taking him down too.
Wow.
And he, ever since that day when he went to prison, has been writing his books on revenge, on these other books that he wrote.
All about revenge.
Yeah, it's all about revenge. He said that he's going to take him down. So that's going to be a cross-examination. It doesn't mean that Michael Cohen is not telling the truth. It just means you got somebody that's really gunning for you.
Right. Shall we so you kind of gave your opinion early on what you think is going to happen. Have you changed your opinion at all? Do you stand by? Do you feel like this is going to be a hung jury?
I think it is. I think it's going to be
a hung jury.
I think
he's not going to get convicted here.
I don't think so.
I don't either.
I think it's going to be a hung jury, and you're going to see Trump coming out with fists and saying, we won. This is a sham, just like the Russia gate, just like everything else, a hoax.
Yep.
And then that's going to bolster his now, would I be shocked if he was found guilty? No, I wouldn't be shocked because it is in Manhattan. It wouldn't be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'd be more shocked if he was in Georgia or, down south somewhere where they love him to death. But, I wouldn't be shocked, but I'm still going to go on a limb. I'm going to say that it's going to be a hung jury. I'm going to even go so far as say it's going to be a slim win, probably a 10-2 guilty, 2 people holding out, maybe 9-3. He'll still take that and spin it in the news as a win. Say I told you so, and then we'll move on.
If it's a not guilty, that's a win.
I don't think it's going to be a not guilty. I think
you need unanimous to get not guilty?
Yes.
Gotcha. So I was under the impression unanimous would get you guilty, but anything short of that, and he's not guilty.
If one person says not guilty, it's a hung jury. So if it's 11-1.
So he can't come out of that hung jury and say, I won,
Why
it's
not?
not guilty?
Why not? No, I mean, he could. He could make it up.
Yeah.
That's
all he needs to do.
He just could make it up. He 11-1 guilty. Let's just say the prosecution's like, I'm going to try this again later, right? Which he can, and he will. He can walk out and like, we won. We won.
They
didn't find me guilty.
They didn't find me guilty. They tried, but they didn't. This is what we feel is going to happen.
And shame on them for coming back at me again. He'll spin it. The next trial won't happen because at that point it'll be election.
Yeah.
And then if he is prosecuted, he'll be prosecuted if he loses. If he wins, they'll defer prosecution for 4 years, and you know,
Sure.
4 years is a long time. Who knows
Sure.
what'll happen?
If we're correct, and this is a hung jury, and he walks out victorious with both his fists up like he likes to do,
One fist,
then
he likes the one fist
he
pump.
does this double thing.
Oh, he
too,
does.
which-
Oh, he does the
Yeah,
dance when he's super happy.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I saw him. The super happy dance, the left to right fist pump.
There's a lot of comedians that have another word for that. It's not super happy. It's double something.
Oh, okay.
But a lot of cases coming right after this. I mean, if he wins this one, then there's that Georgia election interference. There's a federal election interference.
Well, the federal, if he wins, the federal's gone. Because once he comes into power, he's going to have an attorney general. He's going to tell him this.
If he wins the election.
Right, he's going to tell the attorney general to drop the case.
What about that Georgia election?
That's the only thing that's going to go on, but that's going to be delayed 4 years.
Is that known already?
Well, the DOJ will not prosecute a sitting president. Most people won't prosecute a sitting president.
What if they try to prosecute him before November of this year?
I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
So you think this is really the only criminal case he faces before the election?
Yes. Well, there's one more. The
that
January
last one?
6th, the January 6th riots.
Incitement.
Yeah, but
it's not incitement. It's something else. It's like election interference. Isn't that the federal?
Yes.
There's that. There's Georgia. There's New York, Florida.
This is the one that they're doing right now in D.C., the one that's gone up to the Supreme Court.
That's federal election.
So, yeah, the Supreme Court is deciding whether or not he has presidential immunity.
Yes.
So if he has immunity, that's gone right there. So that gets tossed right there.
Yeah.
So he has, what we
He's
say,
got some
outs, as they say in poker. He's got outs. He's got some, chances of getting the flush. He's got some chances of getting, the straight on the river. He's got some good hand. He's got some good hands.
Was there a Florida criminal case? There's
That's
Georgia.
that's a document case.
That's the
That'll go away too.
that's the Mar-a-Lago documents case. These are the four.
Yeah, those documents are mine case. I don't care what you say case.
Right. All right. Well,
Yeah.
Listen, we've analyzed New York. It just started.
Yeah,
The trial
right
just
now, Rhonda Graff, his assistant, is testifying. The juiciest part has already started. It's Dave.
Pepper to Pecker.
Yeah, David Pecker.
Yeah.
David Pecker, and then the other one is going to be Michael Cohen, and that's it. Those are the two nuclear bombs in the case.
What day does Michael Cohen testify? And does that?
I'm guessing last.
Is that stream live, like through Law and Crime or something like that?
It's not street. It's not. There's no cameras allowed. They got people in there that are reporting, like in the olden days, like in 1960. This is what was testified to with the sketch artist and everything. So it's going to be David Pecker. He was already the big person, in my opinion, and then Michael Cohen, and then after Michael Cohen, that's it. I mean, it's not going to be bigger than that.
I guess let's see if we get it right.
Yeah, let's see. I think that Trump will. All right, here before I sign off, here's two predictions: 10-2 guilty. Use one of them. 9-3 guilty. All right, here we go. That's it. That's my prediction. Mistrial.
Those are good predictions.
See
I'm not even going to try to bet against you.
Let's see what happens. Those are my odds. I went to Vegas. I put it 9-3, 10-2.
Let's go.